It's time to define your desired aesthetic. What does this mean? Nobody tells you about this when it comes to looksmaxxing, but there are two definite paths on any looksmaxxing journey, and you can only really follow one of them at a time. And those two paths are refined and rugged. Now, what is the difference? Well, to illustrate this point, I put this picture of Jason Momoa. I think that's his name. I'm not really too keen on celebrities, as you'll find out throughout this course. But this guy right here, this celebrity, this is the same guy in two different pictures. I don't know how many years went by in between these two pictures, but this is the same guy right here. And he looks completely different. As a matter of fact, when I showed my girlfriend this transformation, she literally thought it was two different guys. Because in a lot of ways, it is two different guys. One of them is refined, one of them is rugged. Same man, two different guys. The guy on the left is much more refined, meaning he's more of a quote-unquote pretty boy, if you will. Whereas the guy on the right, he is more rugged. He is more of a traditionally masculine-looking man. Now here's the thing. Most looksmaxxing courses will steer you in the direction of the refined. And that's for good reason, because generally, refined men are seen as attractive because refined conveys status. If you look at most wealthy men, especially wealthy men who are in the public eye, they are refined. That said, there is most certainly a market out there for the rugged man. And you need to understand the difference between them before you go about choosing. So, obviously, you can tell that there are differences, but let's break it down real quick. Okay, what's the difference between a refined man and a rugged man? Well, a refined man pays much more attention to detail. So things like the eyebrows, or the hair, or even the accessories, the outfits. The refined man has much more of an eye for detail, whereas the rugged man doesn't necessarily care about these things. He's more focused on projecting a masculine aura. And here's the thing. It's easier to become refined than it is to become rugged because it's much more difficult to project a different aura than it is to just change your appearance on the surface. Nevertheless, whatever you are, you need to choose. Okay, you need to go in accordance with whatever your natural predisposition is. That said, why not both? Why should you not try to follow both paths at the same time? Well, the reason why is because, again, you have a natural predisposition, and if you try to fight against that natural predisposition, you will not maximize your physical appearance, plain and simple. You're going against the tide. You're 5'8" trying to be an NBA player, if you will. Obviously, that's just a metaphor, but you get the idea. Okay, you should play to your natural strengths so that you can leverage the 80-20 rule and get the most results for the least amount of effort. That said, how do you determine what your natural predisposition is? Your natural predisposition is primarily constructed of your body structure, your facial structure, and your personality. So again, your aura. A masculine, manly man is going to have a much different personality than a more refined, pretty boy type of guy. Much different personality. He prioritizes different things in life. Think about what your personality conveys to people. If you're somebody who has this attention to detail, you're probably not going to want to follow that rugged path. You're probably not going to want to follow the rugged path because it's not going to be congruent with your personality. Your personality and your looks should generally be congruent. There can be some discrepancies, but generally they should be one and the same. They should present the same idea. And later on in this course, you'll figure out why not doing that can be a very bad idea, especially when it comes to getting girls to like you. Now, as far as body structure and facial structure go, I'm just going to be as blunt as possible. If you look like a caveman, don't try to be refined. Do not try to be refined. If you have that caveman type look to you, and you know what I'm talking about, you have this primal look, all right? You're very, very hairy. You have big bone structure. Maybe you're a bit overweight right now. We'll fix that later on in the course, don't worry. But maybe you're a bit overweight. You're just big boned in general. You're going to want to follow that rugged look. You're going to want to maximize that and convey that to the world. Whereas if you have more of a small body structure, like me, for example, I have narrow shoulders, I have a small body structure. I was very underweight when I started my looksmaxxing journey. You're going to want to follow that refined path. Okay, so in other words, the path is pretty much already predetermined for you. You just need to objectively assess where you currently stand. Obviously, you know that you're not where you want to be in terms of your physical appearance. But if you want to maximize it properly, you have to determine which path you're already predisposed to following. Because you start with one path, but you grow into both. You start with one path and you grow into both. Meaning that if you start off as a more rugged man, over time, over the years, you're going to naturally become more refined. And vice versa. If you start off as a refined man, you're going to naturally become more rugged. And eventually, you're going to reach that Goldilocks zone, that sweet spot where you'll appeal to most women out there. Right now, that is not your concern. I know that it sounds appealing, but definitely focus on one path so that you can maximize that path, and then you can start venturing off into both paths, that middle path, if you will. Now, what are some examples of the refined man and the rugged man, aside from the example that you've already seen? Well, look, like I said, I'm not too keen with celebrity names. I know a few of the guys on this screen right here, but again, what are some differences? All right, let's get even further into detail. The rugged men seem to be much more muscular. They have a lot more bulk and mass to them. Pause. They have a lot more mass to them. Whereas the guys on the left just have a lower body fat percentage. Still have lean physiques, still generally have nice physiques. You could tell that they work out, that they take care of their bodies, but they don't really focus on becoming very big. And that's just one example, okay? Obviously, that's just as it pertains to the physical build. But another thing that you might notice is that the men on the right, except for the guy in the very bottom right, I literally could not find a good example for Asian men who have facial hair, but all of the guys on the right have facial hair, whereas all of the guys on the left are baby-faced. All right, this is another telltale sign of the rugged man as opposed to the refined man, is that the rugged man will generally have some form of facial hair. Probably even some chest hair as well. Chest hair, hairy arms, hairy legs, etc. Okay, they look a lot less refined. They look a lot less refined. That's why we call them refined and rugged. It's not that they don't take care of themselves. None of the guys that you see on the right side look like they don't take care of themselves. But you can tell that they don't take the time to detail themselves the same way that the guys on the left do. Because that's not necessarily their primary priority. Now, that said, who do you think gets more women? The guys on the left or the guys on the right? Well, the answer may surprise you. It's both. Because women have different tastes. Some women like more refined men, some women like more rugged men. But once again, if you can fall somewhere in the middle, and this will happen over time, okay, over time, then you'll appeal to most women. But the key is you need to pick your path, and it's not based on what you want to be. It's based on what you already are. It's based on what you're naturally predisposed toward, because again, eventually you're going to reach the middle path anyways. So decide which one you already are, assess your bone structure, assess maybe your facial hair genetics, assess your facial structure, things of that nature. All right, if you look like a caveman, or if you have that natural masculine bone structure, broad shoulders, etc., then you're probably rugged. If you have more feminine features, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, it's just literally the truth. Like I said, I fall in the left category as well. I'm refined as well. If you have more feminine features or more androgynous features, in other words, if you look more like a model than you do a professional athlete, I know that might be a bad example because Ryan Garcia is literally a professional athlete, but if you look more like a model than a guy who's apt to go camping by himself for 6 weeks at a time and build his own log cabin and document that process somewhere in northern Canada, then you're probably refined. Follow this framework for the rest of this course because the choice you make right now is going to define every other action you take moving forward. So that was just one out of 191 exclusive videos in my coaching program. If you want to unlock the rest of those videos and attend weekly coaching sessions with yours truly, then be sure to click the link in the description so that you can get your dream body, get your dream girlfriend, and make freedom your lifestyle.